All right, everybody, welcome in. This is episode 4 of the Scud Spotter podcast. Let us know in the chat if you can hear us loud and clear, and Mitch, if you'll talk a little bit too, just so I know for sure that they can hear you as well.
Check 1 2, check 1 2.
All right, folks, again, let us know in the chat if you can hear me and Mitch.
Hello, hello.
Yes. Loud and clear. Awesome, CJ. Glad you can hear us and glad you can make it this evening. I know CJ's watching from the Midlands of South Carolina, so Mitch, he's one of your people, I guess. All right. We got all sorts of comments coming in. They can hear us loud and clear. All right, folks. Well, awesome. We're going to probably give it a couple minutes before we really start, just to make sure all the notifications get sent out to everyone's phone and everyone, has a chance to tune in. So let's see, what is it? It's 7:03, probably like 7:06 we'll get started on the actual podcasting. But I do want to talk a little bit about what this is, because we do have a comment asking, what are y'all doing? Because obviously this is probably new to a lot of folks, and you're getting the live from GMWeather notification, which you're probably wondering, well, what major weather event is happening that I didn't know was happening? Well, nothing. This is just a podcast that me and Mitch started, I guess, a couple of months ago. And yeah, also let us know where you're watching from. Thank you, Lone Soul, watching from Eastern North Carolina. Appreciate you letting us know. Would love to hear where everyone is watching from. I'm recording from Charlotte, North Carolina. Mitch is recording from the Midlands of South Carolina. So, definitely let us know where and all y'all are tuning in from. What was I going to say? Yeah, so we started this a couple months ago. This is just a podcast where we kind of jump on and talk a little bit about all the things that we have done. And generally, we do it during slower time periods, just as kind of, a fun little break from all of the constant not so fun sometimes monotony that comes with YouTube and just forecasting the weather. Not to say that we don't love it. Obviously, I think I speak for Mitch as well when I say that we are very blessed to do what we do and love it. But there are times that, especially like right now when things are so boring, it's like, oh my goodness, let me talk about anything else. So that's kind of what this is for. All right, all sorts of people tuning in. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's see if I can pull up and take a look at some of the analytics here that we are seeing.
Nova Scotia. Awesome.
Nova Scotia, that is cool. By the way, for you folks in Nova Scotia, I had a comment this morning from somebody asking if Oscar was going to impact you folks in Eastern Canada, and I realized that I completely glossed over that in my video this morning. I was like, that's Oscar. All right, on to the next thing, and never talked about that. So yeah, Oscar definitely could be a bit of a problem, I think, for you folks, especially in Newfoundland and kind of that area late Friday into Saturday, I think is what I was looking at. I could definitely get some wind and rain out of that one. Egypt. Okay. Well, Alice, if you really are watching from Egypt, welcome from Egypt. Alrighty. Yeah, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started a little bit just to give y'all a game plan and Mitch a game plan, because we didn't really discuss ahead of time what we're going to talk about all that much. The plan right now is to talk about Hurricane Helene, obviously, is the big thing that's happened since we last talked. The Aurora Borealis occurred again for a bunch of people, so that happened. Hurricane Milton is something else that happened, and then kind of what's on the horizon here to end out October and start November, which I can tell you has already got people on edge and already people bickering and fighting about everything, which has been, I think, the theme since we last talked, Mitch, and we'll start there maybe. Last time we talked, it feels like the world has completely changed in the weather department and how people talk about the weather and communicate the weather. We've had some big, I'm not going to get into politics because this is not a political thing, but there have been some big political people mentioning some weather things, and then I think that's trickled down. And then just in general, I think how impactful Helene was, and it being an election season and all that, really turned into a lot more than maybe you would expect. So Mitch, you want to talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, it just depends on how deep you want to get into it. So, um, but yeah, people are just, you know, at the end of the day, going to kind of believe what they want to believe about the weather. And, you know, that's totally cool. But I know that, you know, me and Gerald, we just kind of bring our knowledge and what we love and our passion to the table. But it is definitely, you know, it's just kind of like, and instead of people wanting to know what drives the atmosphere and what kind of drives everything out there and stuff like that, they rather just kind of hear just their theories on stuff, and they want somebody to tell them and to sort of glorify that, if you will. And you know, at the end of the day, I think me and Gerald just going to stick to talking about what we love and what, you know, which is the weather. And at the end of the day, if you know, I think Gerald would probably agree with this. If there was something um, out there that controls some sort of aspect about the weather, what I guess what would me and Gerald do about it? You know, all we can do is we can continue, you know, to help people stay prepared, keep people safe, educate people about the weather, and do our part with that, and sort of just kind of ooze our passion through the YouTube channels that we have. So you know, you know, we can get deep into this, but I know that's not what we're here to do. But it is pretty. I think the more we go through in time, the more this is going to become a thing, and you know, it's not just the weather; it's other things in life too, man. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind for sure, and I think obviously just due to the devastation that we saw in North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina, and obviously not to take away from you folks in Florida. I mean, we're gonna get to this in a second. Me and Mitch were down there storm chasing the thing, for God's sake. So I mean, you know, trust me, we saw the pine trees that came down in Florida, and you know there were storm surge problems down there and all that. But I think just with the devastation that occurred in the Carolinas specifically, and even into portions of Virginia and Tennessee, it was something that it was definitely a generational event for a lot of folks. And anytime you get something that feels so unnatural like that to happen, it's easy to just kind of point fingers instead of just coming to the realization that, you know, sometimes generational weather events happen. Sometimes Mother Nature does crazy things, and you know that's just kind of how that goes. But to back out and zoom out a little bit, last time we talked was, I believe, the middle or end of August. It might have even been September now that I think about it. But either way, it had been before hurricane season really went into overdrive. At that point, Debbie had happened, and we were talking about Debbie in the last podcast. But the last podcast was talking about long-range forecasting and the troubles with it and all of that. And then in the long range, we had Helene and Milton and all these other storms. And credit where credit is due, I think, to a lot of meteorologists, including Mitch. The first half of the season really felt like a bust for a lot of folks, I think. We had Hurricane Beryl was kind of really the only big thing, and there was another storm. Actually, I think that might have been the only like big one in the first half of the season. Beryl and then Debbie, but Debbie didn't get nearly as strong as Beryl. But yeah, and then things calmed down. Everyone said, well, where was this hyperactive hurricane season? And to their credit, I would say never hit hyperactive standards by any means. But boy, oh boy, do we have some big time impactful storms once we got kind of into September and then through October as well. It picked up. So that's kind of where we left off. I think we're going to start with Helene and the whole story of Helene, kind of how it started, why we chased it, the whole plan on how we were going to chase it, how that unfolded. And kind of the growth that came with it. So I will start, and then I will let Mitch kind of go in, and we're going to kind of follow the journey of Helene, I think is going to be the best way to do this. And then we're going to show some videos actually from Helene here on the stream, which hopefully everyone can see and that will work properly. We will find out. Yeah, so basically what I remember, obviously we had Helene showing up in the models. I was not planning on chasing Helene. That was not something I had even really considered. It was in the middle of the semester. I didn't really think it was going to happen. So that was kind of my thought process. And then the storm made landfall on a Thursday night. And I think that Monday before that Thursday, Mitch messaged me and said, let's go chase this thing. And I was like, well, I'd love to, Mitch, but that's not really in the cards. You know, I got school and all that. But then I looked at my schedule and I was like, well, obviously I'll have to miss some class, but how much class and how important of a class will I have to miss? And I was also kind of banking on classes getting canceled that Thursday night and Friday, which was a risk to say the least, because there were some classes I couldn't really afford to miss that Friday or really that Thursday night. But I was like, all right, you know what? Screw it. We'll go for it. I think class will get canceled. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And yeah, so we decided to do it. I ended up that Thursday, again, this was the day of landfall. I woke up at about 4 a.m. and drove all the way to Columbia, South Carolina. And then we left there at about 7 a.m. So I'll pause the story here and I'll let Mitch kind of add anything he wants to that whole before the storm kind of craziness.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't really want to chase it unless I had somebody with me, and Gerald was the first guy, I thought of. But honestly, with Gerald, I kind of thought it was going to be a no from Gerald, because I know school's obviously important, and I didn't want to pull him away from that. But I'm not gonna lie when I say that I tried to pry him away from that a little bit more than I usually do. So ended up working out. Gotten to the point where I'll say this: it's not safe to chase with just by yourself. I mean, locally it's cool, but when you go chasing something as big as a hurricane and even like a higher end, significant, severe weather event, it's good to just have somebody with you, just to have somebody to talk to, somebody you can vibe with. And Gerald was the first guy that came to mind, and it worked out, beautifully, and it was awesome. And yeah, just had a really good time on the way down there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll also add here, because this is the first time we've done this live, if y'all have any questions about anything from kind of the topic we're discussing, drop them in the comments and we will answer them for sure. I just kind of pause them for a second here. We got a couple more people that joined. So hello to everyone that has joined. Again, if you're just joining us, this is episode 4 of the Scud Spotter podcast in live format. And I don't want to guarantee anything, but one of the reasons we wanted to do this live, and again, this is kind of pausing from the whole Helene thing, but me and Mitch would love to kind of break down some weather events in a live format over this winter and late fall, should we get a big time storm, especially if we get some kind of Carolina winter storm. I think me and Mitch would definitely like to try to tag team that a little bit in the forecasting department, because the only time you've seen us together is storm chasing. But I think if we were to pull up some maps and stuff together and kind of forecast that, that could be a lot of fun too. So that's one of the reasons we're trying this out live. But again, if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments. I'm going to read a couple here as well. So give me 1 second. Glad to see y'all together on the screen. I'm subbed to both of you and y'all rock. Yeah, we appreciate that. There's a lot of people that definitely like it when me and Mitch get together and do kind of anything weather related or not weather related. I'm sure we could go hopscotch in a field or something, and some people would probably watch that. So, but we do appreciate that. What are the odds we will have another hurricane this year? Yeah, Joshua, we're going to talk about that probably towards the end of the podcast. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Gerald, did you have anything useful to bring back to school, something live field studies? Yes, and I'm going to talk about that as well whenever we get to what happened in the field, because I've learned a lot about hurricanes from being in one, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but one thing I am a huge believer on is the importance of storm chasing in terms of actually applying it to meteorology in class. There are a lot of professors out there who are very anti-storm chasing. They're very scientific behind a curtain, not so much scientific in the field. And granted, you have people like Reed Timmer who have doctorates in meteorology and their whole life is out there storm chasing. But what I will say is my forecasting ability, my ability to read radar, my ability to convey forecasts to folks is so much better because I storm chase. And that hurricane was no different, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But moving along with the story, again, as we left off, I got down to Columbia. We loaded up into Mitch's car, and this would come back to haunt us later a little bit, but we loaded up into Mitch's very low-to-the-ground Toyota, which added some challenges on the way back. But yeah, and this is one thing I want to add about Helene, and we talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but Helene was a storm that, I don't know, it kind of just had a bit of a negative vibe to it. Like, and I know that might not make a lot of sense to a lot of folks. Maybe it does. If you're from Western North Carolina or even upstate South Carolina, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. If you live in Augusta, all these places that were hit hard. It wasn't just the destruction that Helene brought, because every storm brings destruction, every hurricane brings damage. But it was kind of just the feeling in the storm, before the storm, and after the storm. I think that was just really negative. And just for some examples, I don't know, just on the drive down there, there's kind of a lot of things that popped up. Like, we couldn't even get out of South Carolina before a massive semi truck on the side of the interstate was just like burning up in flames or something like that. Whatever it was hauling just caught a flame and went up. So that was crazy. There were some other like personal things that popped up. It was just kind of a weird vibe on the way down there. But I will add, we made a pit stop in Georgia at a gas station. Okay. I don't know the name of this gas station. I couldn't tell you where it was. It was somewhere between Augusta and the Florida line. But man, when I say that was the best $2.75 I've ever spent in my life, y'all, it's the truth. So we go in this gas station. And it's funny because I've seen memes about this, how like Georgia gas stations are basically buffets. And I never understood until I got to this gas station. And in the back corner, like literally school cafeteria style, there's like sections of like sausage links and biscuits and eggs and all these things. And while Mitch was using the bathroom, I walked back there. And the second the lady behind the counter said, "What can I get you, sugar?" I knew it was going to be worth the money, y'all. I knew it was. And it was. That was an amazing biscuit and eggs. So that was good. That was something good to come out of the trip for sure. But yeah, so we did that. And then Mitch got some Bojangles, which was good. He was looking for Bojangles, which apparently isn't as common the further south you get. I'm used to the Carolinas, or at least the I-85 corridor, where it's Bojangles, Bojangles, Bojangles. But I guess once you get a certain point out of the Carolinas, it becomes a little less common. But yeah, Mitch got Bojangles. We filled up on gas, and then we stopped in Taylor County at a gas station for a little while and weighed our options. So Mitch, I'll let you kind of tell your side of that section of the story, kind of up to that point.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I had any negative vibes getting down there. It was just, for me, a traditional kind of trip down there. I kind of took a similar trip when I chased Idalia a year prior. So I was kind of familiar with the track going through Georgia. Georgia's a tough state to kind of grind through when you're coming from South Carolina and going to the Panhandle. As you guys know, there's not really I would say, a cut and dry interstate from, here to there. So you kind of have to do a lot of back road highways. Some are 4-lane, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, it felt like a normal chase to me. I was very happy and to have Gerald with me, somebody I could talk to. It was, when you start to get tired, you're not really tired on the way there because the adrenaline's working with you. You're kind of jacked up. Me and Gerald periodically would listen to some music. But it was a lot of good conversation, but never had any negative vibes. I would say that, that kind of kicked in when the thing was about to make landfall, which we'll kind of get into, I'm sure, here in a second. But it was a good drive down there. Nothing too crazy about it. I feel like we got there with enough time to kind of scope some things out. It was very eerie being back in Perry. Just kind of knowing that they were going to get hit again. And sure enough, the thing went right over Perry again. But from what I'm hearing, they didn't get as much damage as you would have thought they would have got. That's what I'm hearing. But anyways, that's pretty much where I'm going to stop, because I'm sure you're going to open up the segment to the next portion of the chase there. But for me, the drive down there, I would say it was when it hit and afterwards when you just got this weird feeling about the storm. So
yeah, some great points there for sure, Mitch. Let's go ahead and answer a couple comments real quick, because we got a couple and I don't want to forget about them. I don't want these people to get mad at us. So and then we'll get to the next portion of the segment. Let's see here. Oh yeah, we did that one already. Can we start sending some snow your way up in Kentucky? Well, we actually know we've got a couple questions here about winter weather. And I know that's not very hurricane related, but I will go ahead and talk about that for a brief second, then let Mitch answer. I'm a huge fan of winter storms. I'm a huge fan of winter weather. What I will tell you right now is I, nor really anybody, no matter what they tell you, has any idea how much snow you're going to get this winter, who's going to get a big winter storm. We can definitely look at some of the teleconnections. We can look at the El Ninos and the La Nadas and all the other things and the EPO and the NAO, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But it really just takes one storm, folks. And that's kind of the big thing that I think even Helene taught us, to kind of circle and tie it back in here. A season that was expected to be hyperactive, like I could tell you're going to get a ton of snow, and then it doesn't snow all winter, but then you get one massive blizzard or something, and then all of a sudden the forecast, quote unquote, verified. So same thing with Helene. Again, a hyperactive season, didn't pan out that way, yet folks in North Carolina will never forget the 2024 hurricane season. So Mitch, you want to add a little bit on snow? I know, kind of, did a bunch there, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, winter's tough. I would, we've already had a conversation about this via podcast several weeks back, but just guys, I would recommend staying away from the seasonal forecast. I know they're fun to look at, but it's tough. Last winter I didn't get too crazy about the winter as far as my internal thinking. As you guys know that follow me on my channel, I don't make seasonal forecasts, but everybody's opinion on last winter is certainly different. One being the fact that if you live in Nashville, you would say, hey, and you're a snow fan, you would say, hey, that winter was freaking awesome. But if you live in Charlotte, Raleigh, Columbia, Atlanta, you would say, dude, what are you talking about? But I mean, west of the Alps froze up. They turned into the North Pole for a little bit. So us here on east of the Alps, we just can't get anything. So I would say this, just because everybody and their brothers, uncles, dogs, cousin is saying we're going to have a crappy winter, that doesn't necessarily mean we are. Like Gerald said, it just takes one storm. If in some areas you get 3 inches of snow, you're above average snow for the year. So just remember that it only takes one. We could have 1 week where everything comes together perfectly. The week prior might be 75, 80 degrees, and then the week after might be the same way. But that perfect week little pattern change might link up perfectly to all of a sudden we just get something crazy. And I'll tell you, me or Gerald's channel really has not experienced a Carolina winter storm. I got to experience it in 2022. I would say if there's the biggest spike in my channel's growth happened in January of 2022. But I would say that me and him, I probably could speak for him, we are really looking forward to the opportunity to break down a winter storm for not just the Carolinas, but the Southeast. But it's tough sledding right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, I don't think we can really put into words how ready we are for a Carolina winter storm, and we will definitely talk about that more in the future. All right, so we'll go ahead, and I know there are a lot more questions we haven't answered, but just to keep the pace kind of moving along here, we're going to go ahead and get to kind of the next portion of Helene, and then I think this is working pretty well. Let us know in the comments, but I kind of like doing a section of Helene, answering some questions, doing a section of Helene, answering some questions. So hopefully it's flowing well on your end. It feels kind of like it's working on my end, but okay. So next section, we ended with getting into Perry, like Mitch said, and I had never been to Perry before. He had been with Idalia, I believe. Mitch, right, was the previous storm. Yeah, Idalia. So it was definitely kind of a homecoming for Mitch in a way, which is kind of crazy to think that you're in the same town for a hurricane. But this did lead us to a bit of a dilemma, and I will go ahead and say it is a blessing that Mitch was there for Idalia, because one thing that Mitch kept saying over and over to me, he said, Gerald, we are not staying in Perry. Gerald, we are not staying in Perry. Gerald, we are not staying in Perry. I was like, okay, Mitch, that's fine. Why are we not staying in Perry? And basically, Mitch told me the horror stories of getting out of Perry, which was some amazing foreshadowing on his part. Basically, and Mitch, you can talk about this more than I, because you've been down there more often, but that section of Florida is basically one way in, one way out, on a road of massive pine trees on both sides. And what happened in Idalia for Mitch was those trees came down and he basically lost a Mazda because of it. So not that his car got hit by a tree by any means, but having to drive over all those branches and stuff was a bit of a nightmare. It took forever to get out of there. So we did stay in Perry for a little bit well before the storm arrived, and we actually met Bryce Shelton, who some of you might know. I say we, Mitch already known him for a long time. I met Bryce for the first time. And let me tell you, Bryce is an awesome dude. I had never met Bryce to that point. I'd followed him on Twitter and all that, but I mean, he really seems like a very genuine guy, and I love talking to him. And kind of a little funny moment is we asked Bryce, we're like, all right, well, where are you going to ride this thing out? And he goes, probably the bathrooms. And we look at him like, the bathrooms? What are you talking about, dog? And he pulls up on his phone, Google Maps, basically on the beach, like this little, I don't know, cove or little inlet with some bathrooms. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to ride it out here. And we're like, dog, you are crazy. Because at that point, the track looked like that was going to be right in the worst of the surge. And he was trying to get the worst of the surge. It was recorded for somebody. I forget who, maybe Ryan Hall or somebody else, or I don't know. Either way, he was working. He wasn't just there to be there. Although I'm sure he was very happy to be there. But yeah, so we were like, all right, well, we got time before landfall. Let's follow you down to the bathrooms and just kind of see what you're looking at. And we get down there, and yeah, it was basically what he said. It was like 2 outside, nice bathrooms, for the record. These were not porta potties. These were nice little like state park bathrooms with a parking lot and a little like stream of water that was probably honestly only 2 miles inland from the ocean. You couldn't see the ocean, but it was right there basically. And that was the last we saw of Bryce that day. He's fine. Like, he made it through it all. But at that point, me and Mitch decided, all right, well, where are we going to set up shop? So we decided Perry wasn't a good idea. But what we did decide on was the I-10 corridor, because Mitch made a very good point. That'd be the easiest to get out of there once the storm had moved through. And a big thing with Helene was how quickly it was moving. So, just to kind of, get out of there and kind of, follow it up back in a sense was the plan. And we did that, almost hit a couple deer, which Mitch was terrified of. Apparently Mitch has hit a deer before, but I was sitting in the car, and let me tell you, I've never seen a grown man so afraid for a deer crossing the street. But the deer definitely knew a hurricane was coming. Mitch knew a hurricane was coming. And they were definitely, fighting it out there on the roadway. But yeah, so that was kind of that point. And then we got up on the I-10 corridor. We went one place that was kind of in between Perry and the I-10 corridor. That's where we started live streaming from, if you folks were there and tuned into that. It was a great parking lot. Beautiful, amazing. But we decided to move a little bit further inland. I think the reasoning was the track looked like we were going to miss the eye in that place for a moment, is kind of how it started to look. So we went inland a little bit more. Anyway, we ended up finally settling on Greenville, Florida, which is, folks, it's not far from the beach. It's like 10, 15, maybe 20 miles inland from the ocean. And how quick Helene was moving, it didn't really matter if we were in Perry or there. We were going to get the same kind of wind. And decided on that. So I will pause it there and let Mitch kind of talk about that section of the journey.
Yeah, you pretty much touched on everything. I would say the deer part, that's when it started to get, and a lot of this I didn't really think about until after the trip. A lot of it didn't really, I guess you would say the negative aura or the spookiness, if you will, of the trip didn't really settle in until after my adrenaline settled down, after I got home, really, or even like right the last hour of getting home. But the deer, guys, we hear growing up, your grandparents will talk to you about it, so forth. But, how the animals act weird when, they know that something's coming, a storm's coming. It's like they know. And I often wonder back in the day when obviously, nobody was forecasting the weather, if that's how people back in the day knew something was coming. But the deer thing actually happened to me when I chased Idalia, except it happened in the middle of the night, which was, you want to talk about Mitch being spooked of deer. It happened in the middle of the night, it was a different element to it. But the deer showing up, I didn't think of much of it then, but it immediately made me go back to when I was chasing a year ago in the same area. And just how the deer, it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe a little bit later, 6 or 7, and how they just kind of kept popping up. And it's like they knew something was coming. They knew something was coming. And, I remember thinking that, but later on I was like, man, that was wild. And the thing is we were like in some dirt road deep back in the woods. It's wild. But yeah, the pine tree thing, my Mazda's actually in my backyard right here behind this wall. It pretty much nuked my Mazda. Just happened to drive over hundreds of pine trees in Florida. And a lot of me wanted to stay in Perry, but I knew that it was not going to be the best and the safe option for us. And I knew also that the hurricane was just moving so fast. There was no point being right up on the ocean or even close to it because it was moving so fast. I mean, if the eye wall was not going to lose a whole lot of its steam, which is really what we were looking for. If we hung out like at I-10, and which kind of leads to what we ended up seeing and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely, I will say it was a build up for sure. Because once we got to Taylor County, I mean, the sun was out for a little bit there before the storm. It was the afternoon, the sun was out, and then slowly the kind of mist and drizzle began to move in, and then the deer started acting crazy. So it was definitely kind of a eerie buildup, especially for me, because this was my first hurricane, and to do it with a major hurricane definitely was quite the way to do it. But yeah, so let me also go ahead and read a couple more comments as well before we move on to the exciting part of the story, and I start showing you some videos from Helene, which is the next thing that we will do. Let's see here. All right, this is a Helene question from Amy. During Helene, I saw clouds that lit up in different colors of the rainbow, ? I saw blue, green, red, purple, and pink. I thought I was seeing stuff, so I got my husband. He saw it too. Amy, I would first of all ask where you were, but what it very well could have been was transformers blowing up and then lighting up the sky. We get that in Charlotte, not just from, or it could be light pollution as well, as the next thing I was going to say. We get that in Charlotte, where if you look above uptown when a big thunderstorm's rolling through at night, it'll light up the clouds the color of the skyline. So you have blues and purples and yellows and pinks. So yeah, it could have been definitely some transformers blowing up would be my first guess. Mitch, I don't know if you have any other scientific input on that one.
I wouldn't even have thought about that, but yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, we saw it out there. I think I got it on the live feed that I did. But yeah, if you've never seen a transformer blow up, it will spook the heck out of you. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Will it be wetter or drier than normal in the Pacific Northwest? Depends if you mean the short range. That's actually a good question. I should know because I've been talking about this for every day of the week. Mitch, I'm gonna throw that one to you.
I would say wetter. With La Nina, I would say we're going to have a bunch of systems in the Pacific Northwest. So I would lean wetter based off what we know. But then again, I'm not a big homer on, El Nino and La Nina. I don't mention it a whole lot, but that's all we know. So I would lean wetter.
I also think La Nina is a little more prone to some atmospheric rivers. So yeah, I would agree with that. Short term though, big trough's about to dump out west, and that's one of the big storylines in the weather. So definitely wet in the near term, and it has been wet, and it will continue that way. Okay. Can spring just come back now? I'll be honest. I think that sometimes too. Like in the winter, I'm not a fan of cold just to be cold. I need it to snow. I'll be honest. As much as I love winter weather, I love precipitating winter weather, not just cold and windy. So, but we'll enjoy the winter. We're gonna enjoy the winter. Mitch, you wanna add on that?
Yeah, we definitely gotta enjoy some winter, guys. Come on. But I agree. I would say that cold. I don't like March cold. People are so. I love winter weather, but people love winter weather so much that they're pulling for a huge winter storm in like late March or something like that. And I'm just like, man, I'm over it. By then I'm ready to move on. So the older I get, the more I do appreciate spring. I love spring, and not just because the severe weather. And I'm not saying that I want terrible stuff to happen, but of course, when you're passionate about the weather, you like chasing a good old severe weather, a severe storm or two, or chasing just in general. But I just enjoyed it because yeah, my buddy made a good point. I feel like spring in the Southeast is what fall should be like as far as temperatures. We have some pretty nice springs around here just because we have an extended spring. I mean, we pretty much haven't even had winter lately in the Southeast. So definitely love April and March around here in South Carolina. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I will say, I was sitting in class today and I was like, I could go for a magical marginal risk right now. I don't need it to be spring, but I could go for a nice 2% day locally. So Yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump on to the next bit of the story, which is kind of the exciting part. And this is where we get to the title of today's podcast. Something Jeff is what I named it. And I can, it's a laughing just thinking about it, because at this point, I won't say the trip was boring, because it was not boring by any means, but this was the highlight of the trip in terms of, good vibes, I guess, is what I'll say. This was the best vibes of the trip, I think, was at this point. So we're sitting at this Shell gas station, I think it was, Mitch. I don't know if it really matters, but it was some sort of gas station.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that in Greenville, North Carolina, right off the exit on I-10. So if you're from that area, or not North Carolina, Greenville, Florida, sorry. So if you're from that area, also there's a Greenville in every state, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, probably Georgia. Anyway, back to the point. Yeah, so we're sitting there, and I tell Mitch, I was like, okay, well, let's try to park right here, and let's point towards the gas station. And not that we were wishing for it, but we had the assumption that maybe the top of that gas station might go if the winds were strong enough, and it did start to peel at moments. But yeah, so we show up there, we park, I get out a little bit, I enjoy the elements somewhat. And you know what, actually, let me see if I can pull that video up for y'all. Let's see here. All right, beautiful. Yeah, we're gonna try to pull this up and see if it works. So by the way, this is what's the word? This is an experiment. We've not done this before on a live stream. So folks, again, this is a great time for me and Mitch to try some things. So let's see if I can find it. I had it pulled up just a second ago. It is in my folder on my computer entitled Helene. And here it is. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Okay, now I'm going to hit the share the screen button, everybody. Switch screen or window to this. Switch window. Okay. Mitch, tell me if you can see this.
I did for a minute, and
Okay.
then I kind of want to.
Yeah, it might come back. Tell me if it does.
Which, viewing our own live, the whole entire thing kind of lags anyways. And
Right,
on my
yeah.
end, Doug.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay just so the latency stays good. But is it popping up for you now on your side?
Yeah, I see where you're maximizing it now.
Okay, awesome. Okay. I'm going to go and play this. So this was the gas station, everyone, and this was me in front of the gas station. So I will shut up and play this 26-second clip. Mitch, I expect you to document this opportunity for the world.
Oh my God. I got it. Fucking crazy.
All right, so that was my first time in a hurricane, everybody. So yeah, me and Mitch were trying to have a little bit of fun with it. Mitch was not in the mood to be in the hurricane, and granted, it was cold. I'm not gonna lie. You don't think about it, but hurricanes get cold, especially for me. Like, if you can't tell, I'm kind of a tall, skinny guy. So, you know,
Yeah,
I get cold pretty easy.
Gerald definitely embraced the elements a lot more, and that's normally me. I just was not. I don't know. I was just more I was more of a sit back and watch kind of deal for me. And but I was definitely just kind of watching myself through Gerald, because that's stuff that I would normally do. But I just did not want to get soaked. I really did not. But so I was kind of the buzzkill there. But I was filming my boy Gerald. He was rocking and rolling, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. Now, something that's kind of tough with hurricanes is obviously the worst of it comes in wind gusts. Now, granted, there are sustained winds, but those real exciting moments are gusts. And whenever you don't want to stand in the cold the whole time, it's kind of tough to time that. So I got lucky. I got a pretty good gust on that run. But yeah, it was kind of fun standing in the elements, but that came to become a little bit of a problem for some people very quickly after that. So about 10 minutes after that, we kind of moved a little bit. I forget why we turned around, but we turned around from facing the gas station, and we kind of parked next to this big truck next to us. And at the time, we didn't know it, but Jeff Pietrowski, I think is his last name, who, by the way, I'll stop right here and say I have a ton of respect for Jeff Pietrowski. He has done this for a long time. I'm pretty sure he has a degree. In fact, I think he's got a pretty high level degree in meteorology. He's, a great scientist. He's done a lot of work for the community in storm chasing. But what happened was I was vibing, and it was getting to the point too where I had been up for a good 20 hours at this point. So I kind of needed to do some crazy stuff to stay awake, if you will. So I got out of the car and I was like, all right, Mitch. Oh, at this point also, Mitch started streaming on his end, which was a ton of fun because obviously Mitch has a bigger audience than me. So he was getting, like 500 people viewing at one point or something like that, Mitch?
Yeah, it was definitely my most successful live stream storm chasing video. And we got to credit the internet in that area. Somehow in that area, the panhandle of Florida and North Florida had grade A internet. I don't know, signal. It was crazy.
Yeah, it worked out really well. But I got out of the car, and while Mitch was live streaming, I jump in front of the car, I do my little hoopla dance or whatever, and I'll show that video next. But at the same time, Jeff Pietrowski is streaming in his car, and he pans his camera towards me. And again, I'm just this idiot standing in front of the car, twirling my arms. And he says, and I'll show the clip in a second, he says something along the lines of, don't do this, this guy's an idiot. Which, fair, okay? And I'll show you the clip, and then we'll talk about the clip. So, actually, I think that's the best way to do it. Let me just go ahead and show the clip, and then we will kind of talk about the clip a little bit. So, let's see. Actually, let me show this one first. I think this will be the best way to do it. This is, by the way, in my computer, this is titled "The Story of Jeff," is what I named this file. So tell me if and when it pops up on your screen, Mitch.
I didn't read that comment. Somebody said, let's hope they don't procreate. What?
Oh God. Yeah, let's hope you're right. Okay. Do you have it on your end, Mitch? Is it showing up?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. All right, everyone. Here we go. This is the story of Jeff, as I have entitled it, and then we'll look at Jeff's point of view as well after this one.
Hey, Jeff! Oh my gosh! Oh, can't do that! Oh man, it is the strongest now that it's been. Uh-oh. Got that extreme wind warning. Alright. I get it. God, Gerald, you're still out there, man. You crazy. Yeah, he's having a blast. You don't even want to come in the car. You good? Yeah. They say Jeff is really mad at you. He said, there's that crazy news guy again.
News guy? Jeff, let a brother enjoy a hurricane every now and then.
Toast World keeps saying he's furious.
Tell Jeff I'm sure he was 20 and had his first hurricane.
Oh my gosh, this guy's out in the wind. Don't do this, folks. Storm chasing, don't do this. This is ridiculous.
All right, everyone. It's so hard not to laugh, but that was the story of Jeff. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, okay. Before we continue to talk, let me show you all of Jeff's side because I don't want to cut Jeff short. I want to make sure that we play his entire point of view as well. So we'll play that next. I'll play that right now. So let me
this is actually the first time I went back and watched this. That's why I'm cracking up so bad.
Yeah, it's quite the memory for sure. All right. Okay, everyone. This is that entire segment of Jeff's point of view. And also, I would read the comments over here too because they're about as priceless as what Jeff is saying too. So, all right. This is only like 45 seconds. So, here we go.
Oh my gosh, this guy's out in the wind. Don't do this, folks. Storm chasing, don't do this. This is ridiculous. Look, people think that's cool. It's not. It's just not. Don't do that. See? Piece of debris come by, you're done. That's all I'm gonna say. Each his own.
Okay, so that was basically it. But I just want to highlight this one, all caps. That's Gerald and Mitch West, everybody. So also trying for a Darwin Award. That's a good one. I like that. That one is good.
Crackheads.
Crackheads by, yeah. So that's, actually I think there's a little bit left. Let's see. Yeah, okay. What's he doing? Dancing. This guy is looking for crack. Yeah, amateur hour. So, yeah, to say the least, Mitch, there was a little bit of backlash on Gerald standing in the hurricane. Yeah, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll say this. The very act of storm chasing can be viewed as stupid, and it's absolutely dangerous. So if I'm going to go storm chase, part of me is going to have a little bit of fun. You know, I think that I can't speak for all storm chasers, but I kind of will in a way. I would say a lot of storm chasers' reasons for storm chasing is they are trying to get paid to do it. Number two is they want to experience what they love, which is the weather, and storm chasing is obviously the number one way to do it. You can talk about it to the cows come home, but you want to experience it. And three, you know, you're just kind of, I forgot what number three is, but three is something. You know, you go out there and you just love you love your passion, man. And of course you want to grow your platforms and stuff like that. But three, you want to have fun. You know, you want to do stuff like that. And I remember I did something like that. I forgot which hurricane was. Me and Josh Griffith. We chased a Hurricane Ida in Louisiana, and me and him were the only ones out in this massive parking lot just experiencing the elements. I mean, we were just in this parking lot, 90, 100 mile per hour winds. Sure, yeah, a branch could come and knock us sideways at any moment. But man, we were enjoying it. And the other storm chasers were just huddled up in the parking garage just filming it. And I mean, I remember saying to Josh, like, man, what's the point of driving all the way down here just to sit in a parking garage and not enjoy the elements? I mean, you drive all the way here, you know, that's just my point of view on it. So, you know, like my boy Gerald said, you know, let a brother have a little fun.
Yeah, and again, I said this at the beginning, but absolutely no hate to Jeff at all, because we all have different ways of storm chasing. I personally, though, one of the big reasons I do it is I love experience what Earth has to offer. Like that's one of the big things. I love jumping up and down and screaming when cool things happen. I love getting out there and throwing myself in the wind. Yeah, I mean, there's just a level of excitement, and also it's kind of like for me, it was a goal. Like a goal of mine has been staying in the eye of a hurricane, and we're gonna get to that video next and talk about creepy. We're gonna watch some video of the eye of Helene. But yeah, I just like experiencing new things. And like, for example, a big goal of mine has been to see a nice photogenic tornado, and that had not happened until this May. And then it did happen, and I'm in this random church parking lot in Marion, South Carolina, and this poor woman is next to me in her car, and I'm jumping up and down screaming like, that's a tornado, it's happening, and all this. And she's like, what is this kid doing? It's just, I don't know. Whenever you're passionate about something, you get excited about it, you just show your true emotions. You don't hold anything back, and that's what I was doing in Helene. And yeah, I was a little sleep deprived too. So like I said, there was definitely some trying to stay awake involved. But yeah, that was easily the funniest and most enjoyable part of the trip. I'd say the whole experience in the eye wall and in the eye was the most memorable. The funny thing is, though, right after that, we get on I-10 because we're like, all right, we made it through the eye wall and we're in the eye at this point, and we get stuck behind a tree, and lo and behold, here comes Jeff right behind us, and like he's got the equipment to move the tree. And I talked to him in person right after that, and this was with me knowing that he kind of crap talked me a little bit on the stream. But he was like, hey, I was like, hey, nice to meet you. And we were just kind of trying to move this tree and coordinating it. So it was, no hard feelings at all. But Yeah, so that's why this podcast episode is called Something Something Jeff. Now, building off of that, actually, let's take a quick second to read some comments and kind of go over Something Something Jeff in the comments here. All right, here we go. Where did we even leave off? Love Spring, yeah. David says, yo, what's up? What do you guys think of a recent trend for a November system potentially impacting the Caribbean? Mitch, I keep starting, so you go ahead and start with that one.
I think the GFS is on to something a little bit more than the Phantom Storm, which it didn't end up being a Phantom Storm. Nadine came out of it. But you know, the GFS was going crazy with that system last week and it ended up just being a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. So it did sniff it out somewhat. But I feel like the GFS is on to something. It's definitely the most aggressive model with that Caribbean. Do I think there's going to be a hurricane out of it? I think something's going to come out of the Caribbean. I just don't know if it's going to affect the U.S. But if I lived in the Caribbean, the Greater Antilles, Jamaica, Central America, I would certainly watch out for this. And I've mentioned this on my channel multiple times. The steering currents get really weird this time of the year. Of course, I think we all saw, what was the GFS this morning or the one overnight where it pulled a Sandy. And that was pretty wild. But, you know, yeah, I would expect something weird in the tropics before we're all said and done. I don't know if we're running out of time. So if it's going to do it, it's probably going to do it sometime over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be unprecedented to have a storm down there. Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Matthew, both of those were end of October storms that got pretty strong down there in the Caribbean. And the GFS gets a lot of crap for phantom storms or like making storms that never actually happen in the Caribbean, which is fair because it has done that. But this year, I mean, it's been on its A game, I would say. It's been pretty good in the tropics. So it's worth a watch, and it's been very consistent as well, which is something to be said. It's not just one run that it showed something. This has been going on for a couple days. So yeah, good question there. Okay. I've already forgot where we left off. Do you guys plan on future storm chasing events on a regular basis? Great question. I wouldn't say on a regular basis. Like, we don't have a plan to like go out, you know, and all that stuff at like certain points in time. But I think anytime our schedules line up and there's a storm worth it, then I mean, I would be down. I don't know, Mitch, what do you think?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Me and Gerald gonna storm chase some more. I don't know when it's gonna be. Well, we're definitely gonna do it again.
At some point, I think me and Mitch are gonna try to do a winter storm together because that's very similar to hurricane chasing, but obviously it's very different in what's happening. But the process of it's pretty similar, where it's kind of more of a sit thing compared to like chasing tornadoes. So yeah, maybe me and Mitch will try. One day, I'm not saying it's gonna be anytime soon, but one day you will see me and Mitch in Erie, Pennsylvania with a major lake effect snow band. It could be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I don't know, but one day that's gonna happen. So book that. Man, I keep dropping this pen. Okay. Without getting into politics, how real is climate change, global warming really? Twice your ages, and honestly, temperatures haven't changed that much, and the sea levels really aren't rising. I guess I will start on that. And I'm only answering this because I don't want climate change to be a political thing. I'm tired of climate change being a political topic because it really has no need to be a political topic. So from a purely scientific standpoint, yes, the planet is warming. It has been warming for a while now. Now, what are the effects of that going to be? How much of that is entirely man-made? That has its points. And one thing that really gets blown out of proportion that I got absolutely smoked on social media for by some fellow meteorologists is weather events are not climate, folks. Okay. Hurricane Helene was not climate change. Hurricane Milton was not climate change. Whatever winter storm we get in a couple of months will not be climate change. Okay. Climate change is a slow, over long periods of time, change in average weather. Okay. So do not listen to any article that says, Hurricane Helene was formed because of climate change, or North Carolina had devastating floods because of climate change. That is weather. That is a weather event. We've had major hurricanes bring 30 plus inches of rain well inland since the dawn of the United States. Okay, so I will throw that in there. Mitch, if you want to add anything, go for it. But that's what I will leave there with climate change.
Yeah, I think you answered that to perfection, man. So kudos to you for that. But I don't have a whole lot to say to climate change. I don't go crazy about it like everybody else does. Am I going to sit here and say I don't care? No, that's not it. But it's pretty obvious that at least I can speak on the shorter term over the last few years that I think Brad Panovich made a good point, a local well-known meteorologist here in Charlotte, North Carolina. He said that it doesn't seem like the troughs, which, me and Gerald mentioned many times on our videos, the pretty blue colors, they don't bring down as much cold air as they used to, at least as of late. And all just like Gerald said, all you can do is really look at it from a scientific standpoint. I've had many people mention that, speaking of the Carolinas and Georgia, even up to Virginia, heck, even as far north as the I-95 corridor, I would say New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, I would say they're bigger examples of this than, say, the Carolinas. Think of how much those bigger cities in the Northeast get one nose now. Think of how less frequent they get winter storms now than they did, I don't know, say several years ago. I'm not saying there's been some dramatic change over the last X amount of years, but I think that's a huge example. And where I'm going with this is, a lot of people think it's the warm waters off the coast of the eastern U.S. that really just acts as just almost like a heater to these storm systems and kind of warm noses the eastern U.S. to death. And if you don't know what a warm nose is, we'll dive into that one of these days. But heck, we can speak on warm noses till the cows come home, but we can't even get cold air to get in place in the eastern U.S. these days. I mean, bump the warm nose, we can't even get the cold air to actually settle in to get some sort of overrunning event of precipitation. So I view it more as of a shorter term thing. Like, what does it look like over the last several years, just the last few years? But I don't judge the changing off that. But you get what I'm saying. I focus more on the now, the last couple of years, more than just everything as a whole, I guess you would say. And that's probably me more so not getting hung up over all that stuff, man. I just love talking about the weather, man.
Yeah, I think we'll just leave it at that because climate change could be its own podcast, and I could add a ton more and things. But I think we hit those points pretty well. So,
that's a good question, David. Why do hurricanes take weird tracks towards the end of the season? You want to try to answer that one?
I mean, I could, but I'll let you because I know you've talked about it a lot in your video, so I'll let you kind of answer that for the 30th time. Not that it's a bad question, David. That's a good question.
Yeah, no, it's not, David. It's not. A lot has to do with troughs, cold fronts. The later you get in the year, the more these cold fronts dig down into the U.S., the deeper they dig. So, I always talk on and on. I call it the nerding out portion of my videos where we talk about steering currents when it comes to these tropical systems, and the flow around the trough is different, than say a flow around a ridge. So when you have these troughs digging down real deep, like late in October, early November, sometimes it helps to push these systems away. Like if they're creeping out the Caribbean, a trough can come down and actually can push that tropical system on out. But every once in a while, you get kind of these cutoff troughs or cutoff lows, and they will actually dig down and then they will kind of yank them back inland. That's kind of what happened with Sandy. Sandy got yanked. Sandy kind of looked like it was about to go out, and then it got pulled right back into the Northeast because of a trough in place. That trough actually aided in the cold air, which gave it that crazy winter weather side that it had. So it's basically because you're having a lot of cold fronts digging down and just areas of low pressure, and there's a lot more competing high pressure and low pressure that time of the year, as it is, when you're as opposed to when you're like in the like late summer, early fall, where I mean you're just basically getting no dips in the jet stream, I would say. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, just again in the name of time, let's go back to Helene, wrap up Helene, and then move onward. So where we left off again, something Jeff. We explained that whole premise. Now this was the not so fun part of the trip. This was getting out of there, and talk about a nightmare. Yeah, it was pine tree after pine tree after pine tree. Actually, before we get there, let's talk about the eye of the hurricane, because that was kind of the next real step, I would say, before actually getting out of there. Mitch, I'll let you start. What was your experience with the eye of Helene? Yeah, I'll let you go first, and then I'll add on to it. And then, actually, you know what? Pause. Another audible. Let me play the video first, and then you can talk about it, and then I will add on to that. So I know I just threw like 20 different things at you, but
No, you're good.
let's see if I can find it. That is all right. Okay. Yeah, that one I think would be good. We'll do this one instead. Okay. I know I'm pulling up every video, everybody. I'm trying to find one specifically. Yeah, I think this one will work. Okay. All right, Mitch, let me share this to you because I don't think it's sharing to you right now. Switch screen or window. There we go. Switch window. Okay. Let me know whatever pops up for you, Mitch.
All right. Yeah, it's up.
All right.
Oh,
Awesome.
it went away. It did that same thing when you showed. Okay, now it's up. You're good.
Okay. All right, folks. This is like a little 30-second clip from the Eye of Helene. And if your volume's low, I would just turn it up for a second, just so you can kind of hear it. Okay, that wasn't really the entire clip, but either way, you get the point. Actually, let me pull up another one that's a little bit better. And again, I know I keep doing autos, but this is a podcast, everybody, and the point of this is that I don't have to worry about time. So, hoorah for that.
That's right.
There's one I'm specifically not trying to show because, spoiler alert, I say a bad word and I don't want to use a bad word. I think I use one S word in there. So, all right, well, yeah, I think this one is better. There might be a bad word. If you hear me saying S word, everybody, I'm a big boy, so I'm allowed to every now and then let one slip. I apologize, but it's okay. This is a less formal format, so I'll allow it. Switch screen to that. Switch window. Okay. All right. It should pop up for you in just a second, Mitch. All right, so that was, I'm assuming you were able to see that, Mitch, probably. If not, you were there for the eye, so you know what it was like. But yeah, so that was like a minute clip, and luckily you did not hear me say anything inappropriate. So forget I ever said that. I never actually said a bad word. I'm a good human being. So yeah, that was the Eye of Helene, and the craziest part of that video is that was on the middle of I-10. like major U.S. interstate. We just parked right in the middle of a major interstate and just got out. And as creepy as it was to be in the eye, that was one of the even creepier things to me, is just to like be standing on something that should be a normal, cars flying by and all that. But instead, it's just pitch black. You just hear this grumbling in the air, and you're hearing trees snap and all that. But Mitch, I'll let you talk more, and then I'll kind of add after that. But yeah.
Yeah, it was something that nightmares are made out of. I don't know how to explain it outside of that. There's a lot of people that are going to relate to this that've been through hurricanes and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, it is probably just a normal sound you hear in a hurricane, but something just sounded, I wouldn't use the word off about it, but it just, I don't think me and Gerald were sitting there thinking, hey, we're scared. It was more so it was like, are we hearing what we're hearing? I don't know. It sounded like people howling in the woods. But just a deep howling, and it was freaky. I mean, it was, I remember I was really caught up in filming what I was seeing. And I remember Gerald finally, you would think an older guy would tell a younger guy this, but Gerald, being younger than me, told me this, and Gerald's like, dude, just put your phone down, listen to this. And it was just wild. I don't, I've related it to demons howling in the woods. You could just hear out in the woods. You couldn't really see it, but you could hear it. And of course, you look one side down the interstate, you could see the western eye wall, and you look on the, down the other side of the interstate, you could see the eastern eye wall. And of course, it's the middle of the night, so you can't see but so much, but there's enough illumination just off whatever that you're seeing. And then you'll just get these erratic wind gusts. And it was just wild. And I remember in the moment thinking, man, this thing is evil. But it didn't, like I said, I think I've said this already, it didn't really come to me until I really got home. I don't know if I told you this, Gerald, but I literally, Mom, I think I told you my wife got sick. I had to actually go right to the hospital. She's fine now. But I remember I passed out at the hospital and I was so tired. But for the 5 minutes it took me to go to sleep, I could still hear the windshield wipers in my ear. It sounded like the sounds of windshield wipers because we were just so used to hearing that for so long. And I remember thinking, I'm not hearing that, but I am. But anyways, it was definitely, I would say the aura of the storm after that was different.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy. And one of the other weird things was looking up. Like, because we were in the eye of a hurricane, like there's, granted, it wasn't like your perfect, clear skies, although basically every hurricane isn't like that. There's very few hurricanes that have completely blue, clear skies. But like you could look up and you could see the little mesovortices just whipping around inside the eye. And every now and then you'd get enough breaks so you could see, I wouldn't say stars, but you could see that you could see past clouds up to like space, if you will, I guess. So yeah, that was one of the creepier parts. And then, yeah, just the overall sound was very creepy. And I'll give credit to Jamie Arnold, the chief at WMBF in Myrtle Beach, because I told him I was chasing this, and he's chased a couple hurricanes. And he said, once you get in the eye, put your things down and just soak it in for a second. And I didn't really know what he meant until we did it. And we got there and, kind of put the phone down for a second. Granted, you just saw video of it, but we had time even in it that you could kind of just stand around. And yeah, it's a creepy thing. And knowing what makes it creepier, I agree with Mitch, is after the fact, just knowing the destruction that the storm brought and the lives it changed. That's what makes looking back on it even creepier than when we were in it, which was already, freaky is a good word. Or yeah, honestly, I'll be honest, I almost get goosebumps just kind of thinking about it. It's definitely one of those experiences that I won't forget. So yeah, that was Helene. Mitch, I'll let you finish up the story on Helene because I'll talk too long. So just if you want to talk about from that point to getting back to Columbia, and then we will answer the questions and hopefully be done with Helene and put her in the past.
Yeah, so I crashed really hard. We had to get, it's wild. We didn't have to deal with pine trees. And I will say, Helene, when it made landfall, I remember telling Gerald, I was like, and I didn't want to be a buzzkill for Gerald. I really didn't. But I was like, man, the winds just are not that strong. And they really weren't. You would think with how much wind damage Helene caused inland, that the core of this system, this hurricane, would have been crazy, but it really wasn't. I can't really think back at one time where the winds were like blew my mind, I guess. I really can't. And I know that that was Gerald's first big hurricane, but I haven't been in huge hurricanes. I was in Ida, but I wasn't in the actual inner eye wall of Ida. But this system just, it didn't pack much of a punch as far as the actual core of the system. But moving past that, we were talking about being in the eye and looking to the east, which the east side of this storm was just absolutely deadly. I remember looking to the east, and then we drove to the east to try to get out the system, and then that's when we ran into the the pine trees all over the interstate, and I started getting flashbacks of Italia, and I was like, dude, this is. And then I just crashed really bad. Like I felt like all the energy just zapped out of me, which is kind of weird for me. Typically, it's more of a slow, steady kind of approach with that. And Gerald took over. I took a cat nap, and I woke up right when we're getting into Jacksonville. And I remember looking at radar scope, seeing that thing racing through Georgia. And I remember telling Gerald, I was like, this thing is causing a lot of damage through Georgia. It has to be. And I remember looking at the National Hurricane Center update, and it was still a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane in the middle of Georgia. And I was like, this thing just has to be just causing some issues. And sure enough, it was, wiping out entire forest. And then it went on and raced up to North Carolina and did what it did. So it did a lot of damage. I mean, even close to home, I think Gerald would agree. If we probably could go back, I mean, I almost would have probably stayed home and documented what happened locally, because it was wild, even just locally. So.
Yeah, I will say, and I'm not one on regret. It takes a lot for me to regret something. I'm a pretty big believer on everything happening for a reason, but definitely, and I have less regret now about it, but at the time driving back, I had a feeling of, and seeing the wind reports back home and like looking at the power outages, I was like, man, I kind of wish I had stayed home in Pickens or even gotten up to Western North Carolina. But in all honesty, it's probably, not even probably, it is for the best that we didn't, because God knows what would have happened. We could have gotten stuck there. We could have gotten killed in Western North Carolina due to the flooding. So, maybe it was a blessing in disguise that we didn't chase the other threats with the storm, but there was definitely some regret on the way back with that one. So, yeah. All right, with that, let me read a couple questions on Helene here, and then we will move on. And I think briefly talk about the Aurora, and then probably just end with any questions anyone has and get out of here, because this has already gone like an hour and 15 minutes. So it's been a pretty long podcast just talking about one storm. But let's see what we got here. And if you see any that I don't, Mitch, read them out, and feel free to talk about them. Did you want to answer Joshua's question, Mitch? Joshua Price, about the YouTube thing?
John, where is it? Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
About the YouTube thing.
The whole bot thing. He asked about that.
I'm trying to find what he said. What did he say?
He just said, did YouTube respond to your inquiry about the demonetization? Is all he asked.
Oh, yeah. I didn't get demonetized. It was just, yeah. It just, no. I think that was six days ago. YouTube basically said that they basically said they shouldn't have enforced invalid traffic on my channel, and that my channel and content has been, I forgot the way they said it, relieved from the throttler. So I read it as if they wrongly accused my channel for invalid traffic. So of course I emailed back and said, hey, y'all gonna do this, that, and the other, and they have not emailed me back since. So yeah, YouTube's being a little sketch, but we're not going to get into that.
Yeah, me and Mitch have both had some not great experiences with YouTube from time to time. As grateful as we are for it, there have been, and it's not from you folks. It's not you. It's Google itself. It's the company. But yeah. All right. I hope that income improves enough to afford storm chasing. Yeah, John, I don't know if you're talking about it for yourself, but if so, yeah, I would hope that for you, definitely. We did that one already.
Braden's Weather Channel keeps mentioning a major hurricane in Florida. Man, yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you the default the robot stuff, man. Don't get so hung up on one particular GFS model, guys. I mean, I don't even think. I think I checked the GFS while we were doing the podcast just now. I don't even think the latest GFS has a hurricane going towards Florida. So just don't get too hung up over one model, man.
Yeah, good advice there. In Gaylord, Michigan, we have an average of 141 inches of snow, mostly lake effect. Come here and forecast, Gerald, since you like snow. Yeah, Mike, I'll be honest with you, as fun as that would be, I could not live in a place like that. And I almost like snow being a special thing to me. Like there are some folks up there that cringe when they hear the word snow. I kind of like it the way it is, where it's this magical once in a blue moon thing. Now with that said, I would like it to happen every year. I'm not a fan of it not happening for 2 years in a row like it has. But I just don't know if I could live somewhere that cold all the time. But it would definitely be fun to experience one of those big storms.
For sure. Yeah.
Need rain in the Jersey Shore, at the Jersey Shore. You guys are the best. Well, we appreciate that, James. A lot of people need rain in a lot of places. I was reading Myrtle Beach has gone, or they might crack top 3 longest stretches without rainfall. Like that's a very real possibility for them. It hasn't rained since Helene.
I feel like that's a topic in the weather world that's not being discussed near as much as it should. I mean, it ain't just the Southeast, man. It is a huge chunk of the country. I mean, some areas in Texas have not seen rain. I don't know how true this is, but I feel like one of my comments said they haven't seen rain in Texas in one location since Beryl. I mean, that was July. So yeah, I think that that's a storyline in the weather community that should be talked about a lot more. The lack of rain, and I think some people in North Carolina would highly disagree with me, but folks, we do need rain in moderation. I'm not saying we need several inches of rain in 10 minutes. But we need some rain. I mean, it hasn't rained at my house since the Friday Helene hit. I haven't gotten anything measurable. No rain in October.
Yeah, and Mitch makes a good point on his channel. He talks about this a lot. He says we got to remember how to rain without a hurricane. But that's how this year has felt. Like it has been all or nothing. And not even just from hurricanes. I saw Tim Buckley posted for Greensboro, North Carolina. It's been like 10 inches of rain in January, 10 inches of rain in February, half an inch in March, 10 inches in April, 10 inches in May, nothing in June, nothing in July, 20 inches in September, whatever. And it's like, yeah, it has been like boom or bust all year in the rain department. So yeah, just kind of weird, honestly, for sure.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah. Why does it get quiet before major damage is about to happen? I always hear people saying that there are no noises right before a tornado or a hurricane. Any answers? I would say, Caleb, that's probably more of a psychological thing, because you go from normal conditions to basically hell on earth. So I think it's just seems like nothing's happening before, and it's kind of the quiet before the storm, if you will. It's not so much that it's quiet as much as it's just normal. It's the normal before the storm. Is probably how I'd answer that. But even some things like tornadoes, a lot of people say they hear like a freight train sound beforehand and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a good question though. Mitch, did you want to say anything about
that? Not really, man. I don't really
have
a whole lot to add.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Do you guys think Helene was far worse than Katrina? I wouldn't say one was worse than the other. I would just put them in the same category. Katrina killed a lot more people than Helene. And granted, we still have people missing in North Carolina, but even if you add all that to the death toll, Katrina killed more than 1,000 people. With Helene, I think sitting at about 300 or 400 total right now. But they are both, and again, it depends who you are and where you live. for North Carolina, you can't imagine Katrina being any worse than Helene. And for New Orleans, you can't imagine Helene being any worse than Katrina. It's just a matter of personal experience. But yeah, I always hate comparing storms directly like that. But I get why you asked the question.
Yeah.
What would happen if we saw Helene, but in the winter, would there be catastrophic snow damage? Possible to get a Helene in the winter in the sense that you're not going to get a fully tropical system. But I will say when Hurricane Sandy hit, and that was only really a tropical storm at landfall, in all honesty, I mean, there were feet of snow in the mountains of Pennsylvania and West Virginia from that one. So yeah, anytime you get a lot of tropical moisture combining with this time of year cold air, it could be pretty explosive snowfall wise, but it's very rare a winter storm produces the same amount of wind that a hurricane does, especially a major hurricane at least. Now, we do get some winter storms that sure we can get gusts up into 80, 90 miles an hour sometimes in the worst case scenarios out into like the plains when you get those really deep low pressures, but that's usually kind of the ceiling on that. Mitch, I like your new thumbnails, bro. Keep the nerding out going. You know what, David? I said the same thing to Mitch, and I posted on Twitter. Mitch has better thumbnails than me now, so I got to step up my game.
Oh, about losing my phone, man. You made me blush so bad I lost my phone. Yeah, I'm just trying to change some things. I'll leave it at that. This has been I appreciate it though. We're gonna try to make some upgrades to the channel, make it a little bit more appealing for the audience. So
yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Mitch, here, since we're kind of getting towards the end anyway, and we're getting towards kind of what's to come? You want to talk about your future plans there?
Yeah, man. I plan on just trying to make some upgrades to the channel. I think Gerald, who's a good friend of mine, will tell you it's not that I'm old school, it's more of lack of knowledge on technology. I would say it's not because I choose to do it this way. It's more so lack of stepping out of a comfort zone and learning things. And honestly, life is so fast paced with kids, full-time job. I don't do YouTube full time. It's hard to slow down for more than an hour and learn something. And I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. So I need my boy Gerald to come down here and show me some things. But for somebody that runs a YouTube channel that's pushing 90K subs, you would think that the person behind it would be a little bit more tech savvy, but believe it or not, I am not. So just going to try to slow down some things and get out my comfort zone and make some upgrades to the channel for you normal viewers. I'm never going to change who I am or anything like that, so don't expect that. But just going to make some upgrades. I want to make it where I can go live with you guys and with Gerald maybe in the winter. And the thumbnails is the first thing I'm doing. Don't think I'm going to go to the crazy hype thumbnails or anything like that. But working with a guy, he's helping me out. Cool dude. And that's kind of the first phase. The next phase is moving out my bedroom, which you see right now. And going to move to my girls' playroom and kind of designate a corner of this room. Going to try to get some cool stuff behind me like Gerald has, some accomplishments. Hopefully I can get that.
Some accomplishments.
Hopefully I can get that 100K plaque from YouTube that it just seems like it's just
that
taking
would
forever.
be so cool.
So, there's just some changes that need to be made. But for the people who are tuning in that are loyal to my channel, I don't think that Mitch is ever going to change, but I think it is time to make some upgrades. So we're going to be working on that. And hopefully I'll have a lot of this stuff done by the winter. I want to bring some merch too. A lot of people are excited about that. I have some sayings I use on social media that people enjoy. So we'll see what we can dial up with that. So.
Yeah, good stuff. Just because I don't want to skip on it, let's very quickly talk about the Aurora, because that did happen twice somehow. I've probably got a little bit more of a story on the Aurora than you, Mitch, so I'll let you start real quick and just say the second go around with the Aurora, what you thought and all that.
It wasn't successful, so my story is not. I actually was more prepared this time. I actually technically broke the law, I would admit, and actually went into an area I wasn't supposed to near Lake Murray. I don't think they would have cared, but I had me a nice spot, man, and I kind of bailed about 30 minutes late, but 30 minutes too early. But it just was not as I would say as awesome as the first time for me, but I know Gerald got some awesome footage. And what I was more happy about is there's a lot of people that got footage, like Aaron here locally, a buddy of mine here in South Carolina. He was able to get some top-notch pictures on that. So I was genuinely happy that other people got footage and pictures of it that missed it the first time. So, I wasn't that upset. It was awesome enough experiencing it back in May. So
Yeah, I will. I'll talk about it a little bit. It was arguably just as successful the second time for me as it was the first. Yeah, it was crazy. I guess I'll pull up some pictures here. I'm not going to share these on your screen, Mitch. You'll just see them on the stream in a second anyway. But yeah, I had some very successful photography. And by the way, if you don't know this about me, photography is one of my favorite things to do on the side. A lot of people probably don't really know that about me because I only talk about really when things like this happen. But yeah, photography is a huge thing I love. So here's a couple pictures from the Aurora. And again, I know that these are going to kind of overlap with each other a little bit. But all of these were taken in the Piedmont of North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. Oh no, why is that the exact same picture twice now? I'll just show this one, it's fine. And I know I'm going to cover up me and Mitch's face, but yeah, this is over a big little like cotton field in kind of out near Uwharrie, National Forest, which if you're familiar with North Carolina, that's kind of east of Charlotte by about an hour and a half. It's a place I love to go for night photography, and I did on this occasion, and you can see the big kind of arc there in the center of the screen. Or actually, that's not the arc. Those are the pillars. You see those kind of pillars right over this cotton field. And then on the sides, you'll see even this SAR arc, as they call it, which is just kind of an arc in front of the main show. So it was crazy to get this in North Carolina. I'm very blessed at the beginning of the year. I got to see it in the mountains, and then at the end of the year, I got to see it in the Piedmont, and I will show you. Don't tell whoever Poor's Farm and Crop this was, but I did get a little bit of a souvenir and brought back this little piece of cotton from that field. I promise I did not, I did steal it technically. I broke this off, but I think considering it was a massive field of cotton, I also broke the law like Mitch, but this is all I took. So, calm down everybody. But yeah, got a little souvenir out of it. So definitely one to remember. And it was a ton of fun. So those kind of cool events that you can't really forecast. Granted, I guess you kind of can forecast them a little bit, but I don't know. Those are always fun and kind of special. So kind of a cool little knick-knack and some cool pictures, which I'm gonna have to get those printed because those ended up really good. But yeah, that's kind of just the Aurora, everybody. All right, we'll answer just a couple more questions and then we will get going, everybody. So again, if you have any last second questions, go ahead and drop them and we will answer them. What do you think the maximum roof for potential Hurricane Patty? Braden's asking that. I will answer that with I would hope for the best and plan for the worst kind of thing. I mean, it's very possible if we have a lack of wind shear and this, ingredients are there. It's not impossible that we get another major hurricane out of that. It's not. But that it's an outside shot of that. I mean, there's just as good of a shot that it doesn't even form in the first place. So it's just really too far to know. But Mitch, if you want to add something on that.
I agree. But just because a major hurricane forms doesn't mean it's going to hit the U.S. So
that is another important thing. There could be a major hurricane that just dies right after it forms in the Caribbean.
Yeah. So.
Mitch, do those cats ever interrupt a broadcast?
Yeah. They're not in here with me right now. I usually let Rocket hang with me behind me. Now, when I first started doing videos, I would get all the animals out of here. It would mess up my flow, but the more I've just gotten comfortable with talking, the more I just ignore it and don't care. But Rocket likes to hang out with me because he screams at me from the other side of the door if I don't let him in sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so we've got a lot of comments saying that this was fun. So definitely, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel or Mitch's channel, do so. Mitch's channel is linked in the description of this, or you just type in Mitch West Weather into the search tab, or just on the Google, and it'll pop up that way. So yeah, Caleb says Mitch sounds tired. Yeah, I think we're getting past Mitch's bedtime here, so we're gonna wrap things up. Alrighty, folks, again, we appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I had fun. Mitch, hopefully you enjoyed the live format. I thought it went pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah, it was awesome. Hopefully we can do this in the future and just get ready. Winter is coming. I can speak for myself. Your boy Mitch gets super hyped for winter weather. So if we do a live, I think me and Gerald will be a big time hoot with this. I can just picture me and you breaking it down late at night, waiting for each her model to come in.
Yeah, that stream would go for probably way too long.
Yeah, that'd be funny, man.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday night, and we will see you all tomorrow morning, respectively, on each channel. So have a good one. See y'all then.